Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Agriculture. Today we have with us Mr. Troy Augustine. He's an agronomist within the Ministry of Agriculture with specific responsibility for coconuts. Mr. Augustine has just returned from Mexico after taking part in a 1-week training on coconuts. The focus of the training was on disease mitigation and in vitro propagation of coconut trees. And he's here with us this morning to relay some of the information, some of the knowledge he would have gathered in Mexico to the general public. Good morning, Mr. Augustine.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay, good. So we're just gonna jump right into it. So give us a little bit of information about that training that you took part in.
Okay. The training I went to in Mexico was from the 20th to the 24th the 9th to the 14th of February. Mm-hmm. It was a 1-week training course, and it was on coconut pest, as well as in vitro propagation of coconut plants.
Right.
When I say in vitro, I mean that coconut plants that was developed in a lab, and it was planted in the field, and also Grenada is a beneficiary of that same project. And it was very critical that I participated in that course because we had some errors to fix, which I'm glad that I got first-hand knowledge, practical knowledge on it. Also a protocol how to climatize the plants, which was our main problem. Mm-hmm. And from the training, we saw that coconuts can have many pests, because it was basically a pest and in vitro propagation training I was on.
Right.
One of the most critical pests that affect coconut is the coconut beetle, which we are constantly addressing the public on. Mm-hmm. But there's also another more challenging problem, which is the little yellowing disease. It is not known that the disease is in Grenada, but speaking to Mr. Thaddeus Peters, we are going to start a surveillance program to see what we have, and we're going to also be doing some samplings. Now, the little yellowing pest disease, it's coming from the north to the south on the Central America. It is already in Honduras. Okay. So Mexico has it, Honduras has it. And from the Caribbean point of view, it is in Antigua, it is in Jamaica, it is in Cuba, mm-hmm. right? So the pest problem is coming down the island chain. And it would be wise that Grenada has a contingency plan in place.
Right.
Because, coconut is Grenada. Coconut is part of our daily food. Mm-hmm. It symbolizes tourism in the Caribbean, because it doesn't make sense to have an island without coconuts as we have. Yeah?
Right.
And we already know the problem that we had with coconuts in the past. In a couple of years, we've been challenged with it, and we've been importing coconuts. We saw the problem there, and I think the training was critical at a point where we can relay the information to the farmers. We can source planting material and have them acclimatize, that farmers have better planting material to able to cope with the changes in climate, to changes in pest problems, and as much as possible reduce the transportation of planting material or transportation of food, coconut as a food, from neighboring countries as a source, and be more self-sufficient in the production.
Okay. As part of the training, you mentioned you guys did some lab testing.
Yes, we did some lab testing.
Can you tell me how important is lab testing for coconuts and the future of coconuts, especially in Grenada?
Well, the lab testing that we did was, we looked at the phytoplasma mm-hmm. by PCR method. We looked at the little yellowing disease testing, and we did the DNA testing.
Okay.
Right? These are critical aspects when you determine whether your field or your plot or your coconut tree has that little yellowing disease. The focus is on little yellowing because your tree dies completely. It's not like the beetle, you start seeing signs and symptoms in a different way. Mm-hmm. It affects your plantation, and everything goes right? Although there are varieties that are resistant to the pest, the little yellowing is more critical. It can wipe out completely the whole coconut industry in a short space of time. Mm-hmm. And it's not like to say it's something that there is a cure, So we have to get varieties that are resistant to it. That is the main factor.
And these varieties would come from where?
Mexico has varieties that are resistant to that pest. We actually went to a field where we saw Pacific tall number 2, 6 hectares of that grown annually in a under a reforestation program. There are other fields with varieties, but we didn't visit that field. And what we saw with those planting material, the condition in which they were grown are very similar to Grenada. Farmers have to adapt and understand the way that the plant grew and treat the plant like a crop and not just a windbreak or something that, because of course coconut can generate a lot of money. As you can see, the coconut water industry is a booming economy. Right. There is not enough. Once you get rid of the once you cut the coconut, you know for sure that would not generate a tree, but you would just the water. And because of the benefits, the health benefits, because the not only health benefits, but in terms of sports, it has electrolytes that the athletes can use. That's something also you want to see that the athletes can use for refreshing themselves and for rehydrating. But coconut has, as I said, it's for me it was an experience of a lifetime, where I captured all of the information I think that we can handle at this point.
Okay. So to prepare for the inevitable as it relates to the what's it called, the lethal yellowing disease, how do you plan on implementing some of the information you would have gathered while at Mexico?
Well, from Mexico I got a plan. Actually, it is a protocol how to go out in the field, take samples from trees, then you take that back to a lab, and then you can conduct the test to see whether the tree has that problem. Also, there is an insect that carries the phytoplasma, the Apex scrotus. We were able to trap those insects, and I was, it's very skilled. It don't stay on one area, so you have to be very quick at it. So I was able to capture the insect and also be able to take it back to the lab to see whether or not that insect would have the phytoplasma that transmits the disease from one tree to the other. When you look at the trees that we went to visit, it was not in large areas. It was close to persons' houses. And we identifying the tree, it dries up within no space of time. By that time, the tree don't have to wait to flowers. So it's critical to see the signs and see the symptoms and to attack it before it comes.
Okay, and in relation to that, what it is that you would want farmers, coconut farmers, to be mindful of as it relates to this lethal yellowing?
The lethal yellowing disease. What as a Ministry of Agriculture, what we can do is to be prepared. Be prepared by educating the farmers what to do. We will survey different areas to see where or if the insect is present. If it's present, then we catch a few of them. We can also do the testing, right? As well as having the varieties that are resistant to the lethal yellowing disease. So to ensure that farmers that even though your dwarf coconut trees or your regular trees get that pest and it goes down, your lethal yellowing resistant varieties will remain, and it would not affect your income at a greater level, because if you plant sufficient of that trees, remember that the pest is coming down the island chain, right? There's nothing we can do to stop the pest. It gets into Grenada, we don't have the right trees that will be able to fight against that. We would not have coconuts.
Okay.
So getting the right plants, establishing plots, making sure that we have sufficient in a germplasm, first of all, so farmers can purchase the nuts, the seedling from that, and establish their own plot. So that is what the move is. Of course, we're going to highlight to them, educate them, have trainings with them constantly with the Extension Division, and how to control that pest, as well as the coconut beetle and other smaller pests that they. But it's critical if farmers have the right plants in the field, so that if the pest, when the pest reach our doorsteps, we have something to fight against it.
Okay. Yeah. And from your expertise, how long do you think it will take for us to reach to the point where we can actually say that we are well prepared for this disease?
Well, Grenada received, I think in 2017, over 1,500 coconuts from Mexico.
Okay.
And there was also literally resistant varieties. They were tissue cultured plants.
Okay.
So some farmers already have the plants in the field, which we are going to look at in the next 2 weeks. The condition of the field and how they can better care for the plants. But I think we can also source more of that plants and properly train the staff how to acclimatize. Then we bring a larger quantity of plants and make it available for farmers during the plant distribution period, so farmers can have those trees and they can also basically grow them and sell for farmers that don't have as a business.
Okay.
So we're looking at all those aspects at the same time. And of course, CADI has a program with the European Union to rehabilitate coconuts in Grenada. There is funding, a large amount of funding available. So the plan is to return to Mexico and recuperate some of the plants that we had to get. Then we have a training with the extension staff and the propagators how to acclimatize using the right methods and the right techniques and the right way to do it. And then CADI can bring in the larger portion of the plants and we can have a better germplasm to say in Grenada. And once we have the right germplasm and once we have the right care and management, I think we will be able to give the farmers what they're looking for.
Okay.
Right. Additionally to that, we actually visited the laboratory where the tissue culture plants have been cared for, and to see if the coconut actually grows from what you call the eyes of the coconut, that small little thing on the top of the coconut, the embryo.
Okay.
And it generated a plant from that. It was amazing to see that technique and how it actually grows into a plant that you actually would put in the nursery to harden off, to acclimatize, I should say. And from that area, from acclimatizing, you put it out, let it get hardened off, and farmers can purchase the plant. It's a sight to see. It's a sight to behold.
What are some of the challenges that farmers would have faced as it relates to cultivating coconuts over the years?
Since after Hurricane Ivan and Emily, farmers have been faced with a constant bombardment of problems. One of the critical one was the coconut beetle, the red ring disease.
Right.
These two are what we have been facing with on a daily basis, and we have solutions. The coconut beetle, actually we found a trap. We have been trapping that insect for a while now. We show farmers how to make the trap. We teach extension officers how to do trapping. And from the last training we had, the farmers it was well accepted with the farmers, which means that the farmers find a solution to the problem. And by that, they can now go and also not only just tell other farmers, but establish larger quantity acreage of coconut.
Right.
Do their own trapping themselves, and of course relate to the extension officers when they do have a problem or another problem. So in that method, that's one of the pest problems we have. We have been importing coconuts since after Ivan, just because that we don't have the quantity, the acreage, and since that has been happening, it has constantly been happening. It has not decreased. I've also found coconuts as much as $8 in one of the supermarkets, and that did raise alarm. For me, it was like, no, that's too much.
Right.
Our neighboring island, we're importing from them, and the coconuts can be grown in Grenada. What is our problem? One of our problems is that our fields are old, right? Yes, farmers are selling for coconut water, right? Which means that we'll have a reduction in the quantity of coconuts that is used for planting material. But there are farmers who are also doing dry coconuts. If you look all around the area of Conference, Simon, Paradise, all those areas, the coconuts you see there, they are like imported from St. Lucia, 1957, around those times, after Hurricane Janet. At this stage, this coconut tree already passed the life cycle. You will also find smaller coconuts under the tree growing, but they're actually degenerated. They're not actually producing to the yield that you expect them to produce. You're also not even sure if they are resistant to that new lethal yellowing.
Right.
So we actually, yes, they are good for, you can actually use them, but you have to go and select which are the best varieties. But what happens is that there are a lot of guys who are harvesting coconuts to sell.
Okay.
So you don't get any coconuts. By the time they fall, you don't get them, right? And of course, there is no one actually doing coconuts, especially tall coconuts, as for germplasm for distribution farmers, to sell to farmers. So we have a shortage of planting material.
Okay.
The ministry approach to that is to source clean, healthy planting material that are high productive and resistant to pest. Mexico has those plants. The idea is to return to Mexico, get some planting material from those plants, from those tissue culture plants. Have a training for our extension staff or propagators, that how they should care for the plants and how they could, what we could maximize to ensure that we don't have any pest or any loss during the period. CADI also have a program. The program is to increase coconut production and also byproducts of coconut with farmers who are doing coconut. So in the program, we also bring in some coconuts. By the time we have those plants in Grenada next 2 months and the farmers are properly trained, we will able to use those same persons who had the training to actually help to acclimatize those plants. Because if you don't train people properly, they don't know what to do, then you have a bigger loss. So once we have those plants, I think we can establish acreage with farmers under the right conditions, because not all areas in Grenada is suitable for coconuts that can bear the quantity that you're looking for, right? You only reach its maximum potential.
Mm-hmm. Because
coconut depends on the amount of water it receives. So either you depend on rainfed, or you're irrigating. By establishing acreage, we're able to increase not only the yield of coconut for oil nuts, but also for water and other products.
Mm-hmm.
And by so doing, we were able to reduce the importation, and farmers can get healthy planting material. We can show a couple of farmers how to do a seedling nursery, and by that able to sell the plants at a reasonable cost, so that they can sustain themselves, and we can have a thriving coconut industry in Grenada.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned reduction in importation.
Mm.
That does not mean self-sufficiency. Do you think we can get to that point where we do not have to import any coconuts at all?
We will get to that point,
okay,
providing that we have the acreage that can meet the demands. We know our greatest demand for coconut is around August, around February, January. I would think there are 3 times of the year that we get the most importation of coconuts.
Okay.
Providing that we have sufficient coconuts in fields, I think we can get to the point where Grenada no longer have to import.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let's go back to the coconut beetle for a minute. This is the pest that is really affecting coconuts and coconut farmers right now. What would you want what would you say is the most important thing farmers need to know as it relates to handling, dealing with this coconut beetle?
Okay. Because of the beetle life cycle, I think it takes 3 months to complete. Your tree might be affected and you would not know.
Okay.
Right? For the first couple of weeks until you start seeing symptoms. Right? The beetle lays in the top of the tree, and the larvae start eating the soft tissues inside. When that happens, is the younger nuts start, the flower bracts that just pollinated drops all the flowers.
Okay.
The very young nuts start dropping, and then increase in size start dropping until the nuts, each grape just fall off. And that will happen within a very short space of time. In a couple of days, you find those that clusters is dropping off.
Okay.
And then what's my problem? The other symptoms you will find is that the younger leaves start dying back on a V shape towards the inside, and you find more than one, then it start drooping. By then your tree may not be able to survive. But if you can detect the pest problem early, you can be able to save your trees, right? You might have to do some kind of a chemical treatment, but I'm trying not to get too much farmers to use that because of the coconut water that they might want to drink. Yeah. But once the tree is completely, because what happens after that, the branches die back, branch started dropping, then you find the tree oozing, and then the top of the tree break off. By that time, beetles are pumping inside the tree. By that time, the larvae is pupating, right? So you might have larvae pupating, you might have beetles coming out already, you might have eggs.
Okay.
You cut that and you leave it there, it's just as the same as leaving the tree standing. You have to dissect the tree now, down the center, and make sure that all the beetles are removed.
Okay.
Burning can be recommended, but as long as the tree has sap, the beetles will come back. So you have to not just chop, but spray the entire thing, entire part of the tree that is there. Because the beetle would come during the day and still try to feed. So when they come and start feeding, they would die instantly.
Okay.
By then you should have your trap on the outskirts of your farm.
Right.
Not necessarily in the middle of your farm, because the pheromone that is used in the trap can attract more beetles to the area. You want them to leave the farm, right? And because the pheromone would have a radius of 1 mile, 2 miles to attract the male beetles. And there's several food sources you can use inside the trap, like pineapple, sugarcane, golden apple, banana, inside the trap with the beetle, with the pheromone. And of course that has proven to work, even the molasses. So we want farmers to not just remove the dead trees, but dissect and remove all beetles they can find. Okay. Yeah. And of course, when persons like to chop the branches on the tree, when you do that, you also create a problem, because your beetles will be smelling that nice sweet and scent and coming towards the tree. You want your the branches just fall off. When you pick in your coconuts, pick out the cluster, cut them off instead of you juking. That also causes the beetle, because of course if the coconut on the tree is injured, the plant would secrete this oxidizing kind of a substance. It would secrete substances. It will cause the tree to also be like a target for the pest. And of course, the yellow beetle, the yellow trees are more susceptible. Simply means that the pest is also attracted to yellow, mostly attracted to yellow color.
Okay.
So your trap should be yellow as well, right? Once it's yellow, you can attract a lot more beetle. Of course, the pest management unit, the extension officers can also be a source of information to show you what to do. You want to see there, and you can call somebody. Don't wait until the tree completely die. And I said, even if you cut it, always try to dissect to see what's inside of the tree and get rid of everything. Okay. Because that is what we don't do. Once 2 trees dying, we leave the tree, we give up, and then that's when you find a hotel of all the beetles coming inside. It's not one problem, it's multiple problems at the same time.
Right.
Because you might have the red ring disease, and then once you don't control the red ring disease, you have the nematodes going through the roots towards the other plant. So it spread through the roots, another plant get it, and another plant, and then you don't know what to do.
Okay.
So management is critical, especially when you have a young plant. Right. Because the beetle would start attacking your trees when they just start flowering, especially the dwarf varieties when they're like about 2.5 years, 3 years, depending on how the condition on the field. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Any more lasting information for the farmers?
Well, we should be having a training on the 8th of April, at Cardi. That's for all coconut farmers and interested farmers to participate, to learn everything that I understood from Mexico, every problem that we have that can be managed or addressed, and to make farmers more aware of what's there Even the nurseries, persons from nurseries, because we were showing them how to grow the coconuts in bags, or how to grow them in an area where they can, germinate plants properly and sell to farmers. So we're trying to ramp every month, do something on coconuts. Within the different areas, you see a problem, contact the extension division, contact the pest management unit, let us come and have a training, let us advertise what we do, let us work together. So farmers can increase production, and then we can also benefit from it, because we need to reduce the food input bill. It's still way up there. We need to reduce coconut, the importation. We can't be importing so much coconut from St. Vincent. If St. Vincent have the little yellowing disease, we have to stop import coconuts.
True.
So we're looking at making ourselves sustainable, making our farmers source of income, livelihood. We have women that are farmers. We have family farmers. So we're looking for everybody who has an interest to come out to Cadi on the 8th of April, so that we can have a training that can benefit all.
Good. Very informative. Very, very informative. So thank you so much, Mr. Augustine, for gracing us with your presence here today. Guys, this is it. That's all we have for you today. Join us next time for another episode of Let's Talk Agriculture. Bye.